weird? Yeah, that was a mistake. Look, we're all incredibly uncomfortable, so let's just agree to move forward and blame that all on my editor, Alex. Okay? But hello, friend, Nathan here, and today I'm going to show you how to maximize the reach of your fretting hand so you can nail those massive stretches and those brutal chords that we just can't seem to get away from in fingerstyle or classical guitar music. You know the ones like this bad boy, for example. Yeah, but let's start with a story. Back in grad school, little Nathan had puny, pathetic fingers that couldn't stretch to save their lives. One day during one of our lessons, my professor just looked at me and said, "Nathan, you suck." He didn't really say that, but it makes for a better story. He then went on to show me this exercise that changed everything. In all seriousness though, this exercise was a game changer for me in developing my reach and flexibility on the guitar. So I'm gonna teach you the exercise so you can add it to your own practice routine. Then I'm gonna share 3 crucial tips to help you reach those massive stretches. And then I'm gonna show you how to this day, I still adapt the general concept of this exercise to each individual piece of music that I'm practicing. As always, you can download the sheet music and tabs for this exercise for free from my website at beyondtheguitar.com/stretch, or just click on the link down below in the description. All right, so the general concept of this exercise is really simple. It's just the execution that's gonna take some practice. You stack your fingers on the D, G, B, and high E strings at the 12th, 11th, 10th, and 9th frets respectively. Then you just move each finger down a fret one at a time, starting with the first finger, then the second, third, fourth. This builds your flexibility and your ability to stretch each finger while holding others in place. You continue this process all the way down the neck until you reach the first fret. You'll notice that the exercise gets increasingly difficult because the stretches get gradually larger as the frets get wider the further you move down the neck. And that's the beauty of this exercise. It's training you to improve your reach gradually as the distance of each stretch is increased in small increments. It's kind of like the equivalent of building up speed using a metronome, right? Every repetition, you're just bumping up that speed by a few BPM at a time. But it definitely starts to get pretty brutal as you close in toward this first fret over here. In fact, Alex, you might want to pop up like a little disclaimer or something. Practice responsibly at your own risk. I don't take any responsibility for any horrific maiming or dislocated fingers, yada yada, something like that. But for real, while you probably won't dislocate a finger, as you get closer to that first fret, you might find that you get to a point where you just can't make the stretch and you're stuck. And that's okay. Just practice up to that point for a while. Pay attention to your body and don't strain and push too far past your limit, because that's where injuries can actually happen. Over time, you'll get more flexible and your reach will improve and you'll be able to make it down to that next fret and the next fret until eventually you can make it down to the first. Now, I want to give you 3 crucial tips to keep in mind when you're practicing this exercise or any difficult stretch in general. Number 1, keep your fingers as relaxed as possible. This is actually more challenging than it sounds because it's the exact opposite of what we naturally want to do when trying to reach those big stretches. As soon as we go for that stretch, our entire hand and fingers start to tense up. Tension means our muscles are contracting, and contracting is the opposite of expanding, which is what we really want to do to be able to reach as far as possible. So focus on keeping your fingers and your hand relaxed when reaching for those stretches to maximize your reach as much as possible. Number 2, whenever possible, make your stronger fingers do the reaching. Let's take this nasty stretch again, for example. So our first and second fingers are naturally stronger and more independent than our third and fourth fingers. So if possible, when I'm tackling a chord like this, I'm gonna set up my third and fourth fingers first and position my hand in a way that those fingers are comfortable, right? Then I'm gonna reach back with my stronger second and first fingers, making them do the majority of the work. Okay? This is so much easier than starting with the stronger fingers and then making those weaker fingers reach out from there, which is what we're typically prone to do. Finally, number 3, and this one's probably the most important, focus on the weight of your anchor fingers. Anchor fingers are what I call the fingers in a stretch that you're reaching out from, or the fingers that are planted and not moving while other fingers are moving and reaching out. So in the case of this chord example, our third and fourth fingers are our anchor fingers because they're planted firmly while the first and second fingers reach out. And then in the case of the stretching exercise, our anchor fingers are all of the fingers that aren't moving at any given moment because we're only moving one finger at a time. This idea of feeling that weight in your anchor fingers is so crucial because you've probably experienced this whenever you've tried a big stretch. As soon as one or two fingers start to reach back, the other fingers really struggle to stay in place and start to kind of slip and slide over toward your reaching fingers. So applying weight to these anchor fingers locks them in place and gives you a really solid foundation that your other fingers can reach out freely from. And notice I'm using the word weight instead of pressure or tension. Our instinct is to try to replicate this concept by squeezing as hard as possible with our anchor fingers to try to keep them in place. But then we're no longer relaxed, and that brings us back to our first tip. So make sure you're relying on the weight of your arm to pull those fingers into the strings and to keep them in place rather than squeezing between your fingers and thumb. Now, going back to this stretching exercise, one of the most valuable things that I want you to take away from this is how you can apply the general concept of this exercise to practice any tricky stretches in the music that you're currently working on. It's no secret that I'm really selective on the types of exercises and drills that I regularly practice because I want to spend the majority of my practice time playing real music that I love. So if I can work on these techniques in the music that I enjoy, that's a win-win. So like I mentioned before, this exercise is so effective because the stretch increases gradually as you're moving down fret by fret and the frets get wider. So you can take advantage of this same phenomenon by taking a chord or a difficult stretch that you're working on in your piece, right? Let's take this guy again. Take that same shape up the neck toward the 12th fret, and it's gonna feel easier now because the frets are smaller. And then just start working it back down, fret by fret, and that stretch is gonna gradually get bigger and bigger, and you're gonna gradually work back to that initial stretch, just like we did with the exercise. So keep that in mind next time you run into a challenging stretch. Take that same shape, move it up the neck, and work it back down, fret by fret, gradually training your fingers to reach it and keeping in mind those 3 tips that we discussed. All right, don't forget that you can download the tabs and sheet music for this exercise for free at beyondtheguitar.com/stretch or via the link down below. And let me know in a comment, what's a piece that you've played or arranged that had a really brutal stretch in it that haunts you to this day? All right, I want to hear from you. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave it a like to let me know and to encourage the YouTube algorithm to show it to more people. Make sure you're subscribed with the notification bell on so you never miss future videos. And as always, here's to making the music you love and making it on your own terms. All right, we'll see you in the next one.